Okay, so we're back in the kitchen for a change, indoors, because for some reason it's May, but also 40 degrees outside, and I don't understand what's going on. But we thought it would be pretty awesome to start coming to you guys on a monthly basis, maybe bi-monthly, we'll see how it goes, and introducing you some new dishes that we're working on and dishes that we'd like to kind of put into play for all of our future events and future clients coming up from there. I think this is a really great way to get some inspiration if you're in the industry, to get some ideas about potential menu items if you're a client of ours, or just some things you want to try at home. We are in the spring season of the Hudson Valley, and it is the bounty of all things that are green. So kind of playing with that, instead of just kind of throwing another hunk of meat on a plate or working through something that is going to take all day to do. This is something that's short and sweet and simple, and something that you can do on a fire or something that you could really do in your house here. So today we're going to make a really awesome, completely vegan and vegetarian dish. We're going to be working with some leeks. We're going to be working some snap peas, some ramps, a little bit of romesco, mint, fried garlic, a little bit of ajo blanco, which essentially is a garlic emulsion. And we are going to make it look good and taste delicious. And hopefully you guys can do the same when we get back to your houses. We have some leeks here that are already charred. So we take these leeks, and you see leeks on a lot of our menus. We use them on an hors d'oeuvre. We use them on our fish dish all the time. Leek escabeche is our biggest thing. The process of that is taking whole leeks, burying them in the coals, really getting a super blackened crust in there so it looks like charcoal externally, taking them out of that fire, wrapping them in paper, letting them steam that process. If you don't have access to a fire, easiest way to really do this is turn your broiler on. Lightly glaze your leeks in some oil, and then just keep them right underneath the broiler and constantly rotate them every 5 to 7 minutes till the entire outside is blackened. And it's that same process. You pull them out from there when every side is black. You wrap them in paper, let them sit over on the counter for about 30 minutes, and what will happen is the insides will steam themselves all the way through, and you'll be left with a leek that is, charred and looks like it's past its prime on the outside. But when you peel back that exterior and cut that in half, you're left with something that's very sweet, very supple, and just a very gently cooked leek. So that being said, we're going to just throw this right in our broiler right now, just to get some heat back into it. All right, so while we wait for that leeks to come up to temperature and be nice and warm and get a little crusty on the outside, we are going to do a really quick pickle of some ramp bulbs. We have the absolute pleasure of being able to work with, obviously, all the local foragers in the area. Tivoli Mushrooms has been a huge help with us this year, kind of getting all of those first release spring items, mushrooms, all those forage things. We try to buy them as much as we can and just preserve them to last through the entire year. Everybody understands the craze on ramps, and when you have access to them and this size and this sort of like bountifulness, you want to make sure that every aspect of it is really being held throughout the entire season so we can come back and use them as many times as we want. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get a container. We have some charred ramp bulb vinegar that we had made last year from there, which we're going to pickle these in. A little bit of salt and a little bit of black nigella seeds. Nigella seed is a toasted onion seed, so you're going to get a lot of just like really layering onions and onions over and over again, from the acidic side of it to the roasted sweet side of it. So we're going to want to cut these bulbs into just really thin rings. The thinner you cut them, the easier they are going to pickle, and the more that vinegar flavor is really going to penetrate to the center of them. Using a mandolin is also a really kind of way to grate that if you are more comfortable doing that. I've been in this industry for 20 years and I still hate using mandolins. So we always just kind of go for a knife, and like I said, nothing has to be perfect. Food is just an abstract thought of your own personal taste. You could be a psychopath and you can be, overly obsessed with it like I am, or you can just be relaxed and enjoy just great flavors, and it doesn't have to have this very precision feel to the ingredients you're working with. All right, so let's get those just into a container. And I like to season everything that we do in layers. That's the whole mindset behind it is, yes, sure, you can throw a bunch of liquid into something and bury it in salt and bury it in spices, but it's not going to have that same sort of decadence and sort of layers of complexity if you take your time and really make sure that every single part of what you're adding is kind of having its time to do what it's supposed to do. So usually I always put salt first, kind of create a little friction in there, and then I leave that off to the side. And I'll let that sit for like 3 to 5 minutes max. And what you'll see is salt's going to pull all that natural water, that natural sort of like pure onion flavor out of there, and you can smell it right away. It just like, it creates such a burst of flavor right there. So we're going to let that sit for about 5 minutes. In the meantime, we are going to take some of our snap peas, and we're going to do a little quick process. I like to always try to find as much contrast in flavor and texture as possible when it comes to these really simple dishes, because you want every bite to kind of find something brand new and exciting with it, and you want every bite to just show you that, like, yes, this is snap peas, but some of this is raw, and some of this is marinated, and some of this is charred, so you're going to get so many different flavor profiles of the same exact thing happening over and over again, and it'll just make that whole eating experience so much nicer and so much more enjoyable. So traditionally, if we were outdoors, we would obviously put these snap peas in a basket and put them right over the open coals and just let them get blackened on one side. But for the people who don't have that and only have access to a stove, I always say I recommend high heat on a pan, and we're going to throw these in, half of these just in raw. I'm not even going to season them. I'm not going to oil them. I don't want this super smoky thing going on. I just want the natural sugar on the surface of these to caramelize and create a bit of a crust from there. So as that pan is getting hot, we'll come back on this side and just cut these into, like little bite-sized pieces. You're looking for something that's like just a little pop of sweetness. As you're kind of creating dishes and creating food, I'm not only thinking about where our ingredients are coming from. I'm not only thinking about how we're going to cook it, I'm also thinking about how it's going to be eaten, and then ultimately how it's going to look on the plate. A small little bowl. We'll let that sit off to the side as our pan's getting hot. We'll come back through and focus on these ramp bulbs. So as you can tell already, there's a ton of moisture just being pulled out from the bottom of this. So you can see all that water that's being collected there. So from this point, I just want to drown these in that charred ramp vinegar and let that sit. You don't have to finish the whole thing. You don't have to go all the way to the top, of the container itself. You just want the bulbs themselves to be submerged. From that, I will add in our toasted Nigella seeds. Kind of look like black sesame. They kind of look like black cumin. They are really black cumin, but they have a very intense flavor of just roasted onion, and it just adds a really sort of like malty, sugary, just like decadent flavor to it. From that point, we'll head back over to our pan. Definitely nice and hot. A lot of our clients are always like watching us cook, and we're always, they're always asking what it is, how am I using, like, how do I know how hot the fire is? And for so long, it's been something where I've just been my hand, and I always use that as a reference of just knowing like how hot that is. Another good thing to do is just either splash your pan with some water. So we're just going to layer these in here really easily. And the thought behind this is you just kind of want to char them. You want to burn them a little bit just on one side. A lot of things that we always tell our clients and a lot of the cooks that work with us is that we treat every single ingredient that we put on the fire like it is a steak or a piece of protein. You want to sear it really, really hard on one side of the plate, and you want to let that carry over from there, because once that heat is introduced into that product, even if you remove it from the flame or remove it from the pan, it's still cooking even after you remove it. So that being said, let's check on these leeks here. And these are getting close. We're going to add just a couple drops of fat in here. So we're not looking to cook these all the way through. Most importantly, we are really just looking to have one side of these just blackened, and the other side, because of the natural steam and the water that's in there that's heating up, it's going to essentially like blanch the other half of it. And then when you combine the two together, you're going to just have this really great sensation of like fresh and chunkiness, caramelized sugars, a little bit of bitterness from there, And then when you hit that with a couple pops of acidity, it's really just going to bring everything to life. So at this point, we can really kind of start putting this dish together. Here we have a super classic traditional romesco by concept. Obviously, within Woodfire Food, we're always figuring out other ways to complicate very simple things. So we work with a ton of sun-dried peppers throughout the season. And then when that season is kind of over, we take the residual sun-dried peppers, we drown them in vinegar and let them sit for 3 to 6 months. And then we take those vinegars and peppers out now that are fully hydrated, and that's what we use as our base for the romesco. So this is a little bit of Calabrian chili paste, sun-dried peppers, which are sweet and tangy, roasted garlic puree, a few pieces of bread that are soaked in red wine vinegar to help emulsify everything all the way through, and some grated almonds in here and mint. So you're just going to want to, you know, this sauce is not spicy by any means. Everybody sees a color like this, and they're always just like, oh my God, it's going to be so hot. This is just sweet and tangy and punchy and tart-like, and just a really good base for a dish that's going to be fresh and sweet from beginning to end. Let's check on our peas. Yeah, perfect. All right, so you can just tell right away that we have one extremely black inside of these, but the color of these in comparison to the completely raw ones, these are much deeper, they're much sweeter. You can tell all that sugar is really kind of like coming to that surface, and you're just gonna have a great contrast of flavor coming through here. So we're gonna run through these really quickly with our knife, cut these down the same exact size as the raw ones we had cut before, and we're just gonna combine the two together. All right, so now we're gonna take some of our roasted vegetable salt, which just has, you know, vegetables from kind of all seasons going on there, but just a really great contrast of utilizing the natural sugar that's in the produce that we work with. Obviously, the roasted garlic, roasted onion in there. We even have a bunch of like onion ash that we fill throughout this, which kind of has a really great like decadent flavor of like French onion soup. So this is just going to really help bring out the sugar even more of these peas. And when you're working with places like MX Morningstar, you know, these are people that really focused on kind of having the best possible version of these ingredients, and that's all we want to work with there. So we'll take that. We'll take a few little shots of that vinegar. And we're kind of making like a really, really chunky salsa in a sense with this. Some really good first press Sicilian olive oil. So these right now are about 85% cooked through. What we're gonna do is split these in half, cut them to the portion size that we wanna kind of serve them as. And then we are gonna cut them in half once more. And as you could tell, you know, the exterior of this is obviously one color, and it looks like it's, you know, people are like, oh, this is overcooked, it's all this stuff, but when we cut down into the center of these, you're just left with this super steamy, super sweet leek. Get these all cut, and we're gonna put them right back in that pan, and we're just gonna get a little bit of crust on these. So at this point, what I like to do is take this ajo blanco, which is an emulsion of Marcona almonds that are soaked in water, cooked down with some cloves of garlic and some olive oil, and then just pureed super smooth. So when we're out in the field working on this dish, we would then take one of our baskets and fill it with some ripping hot coals and hold it over the top of this. And what would happen is like the same idea of like a creme brulee. And I just like to take a little offset spatula. You can use a backup spoon, whatever it is, and just layer these out. Just so every single corner to corner is getting that flavor of garlic, is getting that caramelized garlic crust. And then from here, we're gonna go right back into that broiler. Yeah, so I think every month we're gonna kind of focus on a brand new dish that we are working on. Obviously, you're gonna kind of see things seasonally change all the time, but we also would just love to hear like what you guys are interested in seeing, or dishes that you've seen from us in the past that you've always been curious about and how to do. I think it's really starting this like open forum of just information is great, and it kind of makes me remake a lot of dishes that I haven't made in a while. So don't hesitate to reach out. All right, so right back to it. Here, bring our leeks over to the cutting board. And I just like to kind of crush these right now in that large flake sea salt. Keep in mind that we haven't seasoned these at all from cooking to where we are right now. So it may look like I'm putting a lot on, but I'm also making up for all the lack of seasoning leading up to this point. The sauce is very seasoned, and now the leeks are very seasoned, and then we'll just cut a little side of a lemon. A little trade secret for you here. If you just need a little piece of lemon and you don't want to deal with like the seeds or getting a strainer or anything else, what we usually do is just cut right off to the side of center. Just give it a little scrape from here, getting those out, and now you have just straight lemon juice ready to go with nothing really getting in the way. And you can never really put too much lemon when it comes to this. You want these to be as acidic as possible. You want them to be as bitey and as fresh as possible. And it just makes your life so much better. There's no right way to plate this. Everyone's going to have their own expectation. Everyone's going to have their own sort of vision of it. But you want to make it even, and you want to see each little element that's kind of going on there. So I always just like to put everything a little catty-cornered, a little off-center, because I'm building a dish in just pure layers at this point. You know, you're always going to want to think about, you're always going to want to think about having some height on some stuff, and you want to treat this like this is an entree, you know, like this could be a whole meal that you could sit down with, and everyone's going to be like, oh, there's no meat on it, it's not a real meal. Well, there's a whole world of people out there that don't eat meat, so food is still food, and we are that company that everybody thinks we just focus on meat, but really produce is kind of where we're at from there. Next, we're going to kind of stud this a little bit more with some of this ajo blanco sauce. Now you're going to have the same thing, two different contrast of flavors going on. One, just the sauce as is, and the other one, the sauce that's been caramelized. And then from there, we'll follow through with our chunky boy peas. You know, and as you're kind of like going through this plate up and everything, and as you're just plating even at home, just think about how you want this dish to eat. When you're being creative and you're trying to come up with something new, think about how you want those bites to be. You know, you want a cut of the leek with the sauce, with the beautiful peas on there. So everything should have a home, and it shouldn't just be scattered, you know, kind of all across the top there. You want to have these little pockets so you can see the contrast of all the different flavors, colors, and textures that are going through this. From there, we're just going to finish with our ramp pickles. And I'm just kind of beating these up a little bit in this container because I want all these little individual rings to kind of separate so we don't have just big clusters of things going on all over the place. Grab a nice little pair of tweezers. You can use forks at this point because you don't want to just like have spoonfuls of everything there. You just want to utilize just little clusters of just acidity. All right, from here, we're going to kind of think about texture now. That's the next layer up. Another thing that you'll always notice about me is that I am always seasoning in layers. So we have salt down on the leeks. We put the next round of ingredients on. I will do another coating of molten salt over the top just to really kind of bring that brightness in there. Here we have some chopped deep fried garlic that's just fried in olive oil. And then to kind of bring the almonds full circle within this dish, we have some of our Malcorna almonds that were at the base of our ajo blanco sauce. And we took these and we burnt them over the coals outside. So same thing, blackened on one side, and then just a nice salty toasted almond from there. You're gonna get a little sweetness. And I just take these with a microplane and we're just gonna give a quick dusting over the top. All right, from here, we are going to take some more of that first press olive oil. We're gonna take some mint leaves, because it is spring and we're all about freshness and just pops of things that are just gonna enlighten your palate. That's also just a very classic thing. Spain, mint and romesco, mint and leeks. It just makes sense with the dish as a whole, and especially keeps it very, very light. And that is it. I personally would like to put some chili oil on this because I think a little bit of heat would do wonders for there. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Because we deserve it. We all deserve it. But wait, there's more. And that, my friend, is the new spring set of our leek dish that we are doing for the remainder of this month, probably heading into the first couple weeks of June as well. Right now we're serving this on the side of all the proteins that we put out on the table, and it's just been enjoyable to make and kind of build from there. And it's pretty crazy to see like 18 plates of this, double this size, be going out to table, looking exactly the same, eating exactly the same. But this is something that you can do at home. You know, head to your local farmer's market, head to your local store. If you got some leeks, all of this stuff is available. If you guys have more interest in kind of figuring out other, like the sauce recipes and stuff like that, just reach out to us. I'll gladly give you all the information from there and the process of how we did it. And I hope you guys really enjoyed spending time in the kitchen. Cheers.